Hello everyone and welcome back to the SULS podcast. Thank you for joining me for another installment of the show. I have to be honest, this week's episode is probably my favourite one yet. I feel like there's been some real highlights so far for Series 2, but today's episode just fills me with a lot of joy and a lot of enthusiasm and encouragement for the future, and a lot of that is down to today's guest, and that guest is Mr. James McFarlane. James is a newly qualified solicitor in the Contentious IP and Tech team at Burness Paull, and James joins me today to discuss his time at the University of Glasgow, how he found that process, how he found his way into Burness Paull, how his traineeship was there, and ultimately how he found his way into the Contentious IP and Tech team there. And not only does James do a really good job of explaining the kind of role he's involved in, his trajectory to date, he also shines a really important light on ensuring a work-life balance, and he discusses his lifelong passion for music and how that helps him switch off from the legal profession and ensure that he doesn't become obsessed with his legal role. And I think that's something which we definitely want to convey on the podcast and across the society generally. So like I say, this is an amazing episode for me personally. I could have spoke to James for hours on end. Unfortunately, I had to, stick to my script somewhat and make sure I asked the important questions which I wanted to ask. Otherwise, I would have been here asking 100 different questions and no one would ever listen to the episode because it would be far too long. So I hope you all enjoy. I hope you find it as beneficial as I did, and definitely check out James's music links in the description below.
Welcome to the Stirling University Law Society podcast, proudly sponsored by Ashurst Advance, creating client value through advanced thinking. Now, over to your host and Vice President, Jedd France.
So, James, first of all, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's an absolute privilege to have you here today. Before we jump into the episode itself, it's something I always like to do these days. Summer period is gone now, so I always like to check in and see how the guest's summer went. So how was the summer period for you? Were you working a lot? Did you get to go away on holiday anywhere? How was that summer period for you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be speaking on it. And in relation to my summer, I just played a lot of golf, to be honest with you. I tried my best. I live quite near a golf course, so I done that and played a lot of music. And in terms of work, I got some time off, obviously, used some annual leave during the summer, and worked obviously the rest of the time. So it's been a quite good mix, and got to enjoy the fine Scottish weather. So
I was going to say, we had some fine summer weather over the period, didn't we? It was quite strange. We've mentioned it a few times on previous episodes, how the summer just kept dragging on and on and on. And, being in Scotland and growing up here, you're used to it kind of ending after like a week or a few days. It just kept dragging on and on and on. So did you not get to go abroad anywhere? Was the restrictions still too much to kind of navigate, or just pretty much in Scotland for you?
Yeah, I just stayed in Scotland. I think with the restrictions in place, it made it a wee bit more difficult. So hopefully I can make up for that next year. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's always safe to just not plan anything too far in advance, because like we've seen before, people always end up booking though, and then restrictions change. You never know what's going to happen. You end up losing money or whatever ends up happening, because we all know that COVID's it's quite hard to predict. So it's probably best to just get a wait and see how things are at the time. So before we jump into this list of questions that I have for you here, James, I just want to give you, a couple minutes to brief everyone as in terms of like who you are, where you came from, like where you went to uni, things like that. So do you want to give us a bit of a background as to who you are?
Yeah, so I'm from Glasgow originally, and I've stayed here all my life, and went to school in Glasgow, then unsurprisingly went to uni in Glasgow, then done my diploma in Glasgow. I went to the University of Glasgow for both my degree and my diploma. I went there straight from school, which was nice, and I really enjoyed university. I must say, going to do law wasn't something that felt realistic to me as I started high school, but as the time went on and as I got good exam results in the end up, that was basically how I ended up there. I always liked the idea doing law, so going to do it was certainly a good experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure any Scottish listeners will be able to tell exactly where James is from, because you've got to have one of the thickest Glaswegian accents I've heard for a long time, James. It's really good to hear, because we speak to people from all over on the show. I can't really remember anyone that's got such a thick Glaswegian accent. It's really good because we spoke on the last episode with Jedd Oliveira at Ashurst, and she said that her favourite city in Scotland is Glasgow, and we kind of got into a bit of a discussion about Glasgow versus Edinburgh, and I fell firmly on the side of Glasgow, and I'm sure as a Glasgow boy yourself you'll fall on that side as well. So you mentioned you went to uni in Glasgow there, James, so how did you find that experience overall? Was there any modules that stood out for you that you really liked, or how did it prepare you for working in the legal industry generally?
Yeah, so when I went to uni at first, I didn't really know much about it, to be honest. I just went there with quite an open mind, no expectations, but when I turned up there, I thought it was absolutely brilliant from the get-go. I mean, the people that I met at uni are definitely some of the best people that I have met in my life, and obviously I think when I went there at first it was a wee bit daunting, because I started, obviously I get quite good at exam results at school, but then you go there and I just instantly thought, oh my goodness, like everybody here is smarter than me. So it was quite difficult. I think I had a wee bit of, I think it's called imposter syndrome. I think that certainly was the case for me going through uni, actually all the way through, to be honest with you, but that didn't take away the enjoyment. It just, I really thought that everybody there was so good at what they're doing, and it looked as though everybody knew what they were doing, but actually it turned out in the end that we were all kind of in the same boat. That's just not the way it looks at the beginning. And in terms of modules that I liked, I was always into contract law. I liked that from the get-go in first year, and then as I moved through, I'd done quite a lot of criminal law, which I enjoyed, and then in my honours year, I done company law and financial law, which was great. I really enjoyed both of these subjects. I just quite liked the whole nature of the two of them, and the way the course was actually set up, and the lecturer was great in that respect. My dissertation was to do with credit cards and credit card debt, and my dissertation advisor for that was somebody who really stood out as a great lecturer to me, and so that was a great experience, and it worked out quite well in the end up.
And how did you find the campus? Because everyone knows the University of Glasgow campus is out of this world. It's like Hogwarts, like, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing to see. I actually feel as though I appreciated it more once I actually finished uni.
Yeah.
Because when I was going to uni, you kind of just go in there to do your work, basically. So I think once I'd graduated, I really got to enjoy it a wee bit more.
Yeah.
I took my family around just to show them about, and it was, oh no, it is great. I must say, the buildings are amazing.
Yeah. You must have some nice graduation photos from places like that. It must be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I do actually. It's funny because I'm a twin, and me and my twin, we graduated on the same day. So mine's, I think, was at 11 o'clock, and his was at 3 o'clock.
Right.
So I got some graduation photos, and then had to dash to Strathclyde to go to his graduation.
Yeah.
So that was good.
And you mentioned your twin there. Is he doing law as well, or?
No, he's actually doing a PhD in economics at the University of Strathclyde just now. So,
but that's intense.
Yeah, it seems as though it is intense, but he's pretty laid back and pretty switched on, so I think he'll handle it fine.
Yeah, well, all the best to him. So, moving on to how you found your way into Burness Paull, did you do any like vacation schemes in your third year or your fourth year, and then things like that? Did you do any like placements, or what was the kind of application process like for you? Yeah,
so essentially a big part of the Burness Paull application and recruitment process is that there was a summer placement, and that still goes on to this day. But so I applied for the summer placement for Burness Paull actually after my fourth year at university. I think just because after the third year I wasn't quite sure as to
Yeah.
what kind of law I wanted to go into, and yeah, basically all the rest of the considerations that you have to take into account when you're at uni. So I applied for that at the end of 4th year and was lucky enough to get on the summer placement, and that was a summer placement which consisted of 6 weeks, 3 weeks in one seat and 3 weeks in another. The seats that I was in was dispute resolution first and then corporate finance, and I really enjoyed it. And then after that, I was lucky enough again to be offered a traineeship, which I started 2 years ago. So yeah, that was great. I mean, Burness Paull was always a firm that I had my eye on because I'd always heard that they were really good in terms of their culture and basically how nice everybody is to each other. And when I went on a summer placement, that certainly was the case. So that just made up my mind from there.
Yeah, and was that always something that played a big part in your decision-making process? Because it's something I've mentioned a few times on the show, how much kind of company and firm culture is to me in determining where I want to work in the future. For me, the kind of work that I do is obviously important, but just as important for me is what the culture's like, how the people are, how they treat you, do you feel valued, things like that. So was that something you placed firmly at the top of your priority list as well?
Absolutely. That was number one, I think, in any job, but especially in the legal industry. I think the culture is so important, and having the right people around you, nice, supportive people, is so important for me. It's okay being able to do the work, but I think the actual experience with the people and having a good team network around you is definitely, and was definitely, top of my list of priorities when I was looking at firms to work with. I just think it's so important that it adds so much to your happiness, and even obviously through this pandemic, the support that my colleagues in the firm have given me personally has been second to none, which is obviously massively appreciated and important to me.
It definitely makes a big difference, doesn't it? Because no one wants to wake up 5 days a week, first thing in the morning, and have to go somewhere where they feel like they're going to get shouted at constantly, or they don't feel valued, or anything like that. A bad work culture can really be detrimental to someone's mental health. Quick one, does James's experience on the Burness Paull summer placement scheme sound appealing to you? Are you a 3rd or 4th year LLB student interested in securing a position on the scheme for next summer? Well, luckily for you, the applications are open just now, and the link to do so is in the description below. The deadline for applications is the 3rd of January, however you are encouraged to apply early. So if you are interested, then definitely head over to the Burness Paull website and submit your application as soon as possible. Additionally, the firm's Winter Insight event will take place on the 24th of November for 3rd and 4th year LLB students, giving you the chance to gain an insight into what it's like working in a leading commercial law firm. To register for your free spot, click the Eventbrite link in the description. Now, back to the podcast. So moving on to your traineeship, could you tell us a little bit about that? How was the process at Burness Paull over those 2 years, and what kind of departments did you sit in during your traineeship?
Yeah, so the traineeship from start to finish was an absolutely amazing learning experience. More than anything, I think actually getting used to working within that office environment as opposed to being at uni is something that can be quite a steep learning curve at the start. But
yeah,
as I say, the people that I've worked with along the way have been absolutely fantastic. And in terms of the seats that I've been in, my first seat was in Scottish commercial property, and then my second seat was in English commercial property. My third seat was in a secondment at Scottish Power, and then my fourth seat is the seat that I qualified into, which is within the Contentious IP and tech team. Yeah, so that was my traineeship. I must say that it was all absolutely fantastic from the get-go, and I really enjoyed every seat, to be honest. They were all so different, and they all gave me so many opportunities to learn and just grow until obviously now being an NQ lawyer. So yeah.
And you mentioned your secondment at Scottish Power. How was that? Was that something you would kind of recommend to future trainees if they get the chance to go on secondment to a kind of alternative company? Is that something you'd recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that was a massive part of my traineeship in terms of going to a company and seeing it from a kind of client perspective. And it gives you a better view of what clients expect and what they look for. and the team at Scottish Power that I worked with as well, again, coming back to the people, they were absolutely amazing, genuinely, from start to finish. I feel like I created quite a good bond with them, even though it was all remote working, but I've managed to meet up with them afterwards. But I must say that experience and actually getting out of your comfort zone a wee bit and going to work for a different company and just seeing it from the Scottish Power point of view and what they expect was absolutely so valuable in terms of going forward and coming to the point where I qualified.
What did it involve, James? Was it, were you working pretty much as like in-house legal team, or was it kind of alternative work? What was it kind of like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so you worked within the corporate legal team, and on a day-to-day basis, there was a massive variety of work that I worked on, and I mean mostly it was to do with commercial contracts, but that wasn't what it was limited to. It was just it covered such a wide range of areas of law, and you got to obviously speak with a lot of different people from the company, which was also great because it gave me that experience of actually maybe leading calls and getting a lot of interaction with the in-house clients there. So as I say, that was a massive stepping stone for me in terms of my development as a trainee, and then obviously coming into qualifying. But the people at Scottish Power were so supportive the whole time, and I really appreciate that, and I've told them that since.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a very beneficial experience for you. Like you say, I think it's good to kind of take an alternative step during that traineeship and kind of, like you say, put yourself out of your comfort zone. Now, I want to ask you a hard-hitting question here, James, because Burness Paull are one of the bigger firms in Scotland, and you know, one of the worries perhaps for law students coming through who are looking to kind of go on the same kind of trajectory to yourself in terms of diploma and then traineeship and ultimately qualifying as a solicitor in Scotland. What was the kind of work schedule like for you throughout your traineeship? Because we hear horror stories about, you know, working 6 hours a week, sometimes up to 1 a.m. Is that true? Was that true for you? What was your kind of work schedule like during that 2 years?
It wasn't true for me, to be honest. I think the great thing about the firm is that as long as you get the work done, and meet the deadlines, you can work however suits you. Obviously, probably being there from 9 to 5 is obviously what you want to be. But I'm quite an early bird, and so I preferred to go in early, which meant that I could even when we were busy, that I could finish a little bit earlier, which was good. And it was good because the first team that I worked in were also in early, and they preferred it that way. So that was quite a nice way to come into the firm. And in terms of now, and the team that I work in now, is very much the same. It's as long as the work gets done, obviously to a very high standard, then whenever you do that work is kind of less important in this, obviously the new kind of normal that we're entering into, and that really suits me, and I think it suits a lot of people, because I think we've all realised that we can work remotely and also go into the office if we want to. So I really enjoy that freedom. So I would say there's been no horror stories from me throughout the traineeship. That's not been the case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying about the kind of flexible working and just getting the work done. You know, I think the pandemic definitely accelerates the fact that kind of wakes people up to the fact that we don't need to be sitting at a desk 9 till 5 or 9 till 6 or whatever it may be. You know, if a deadline is like 8 o'clock on whatever day, it doesn't really make a difference whether you get it done 12 hours prior, 24 hours prior. It doesn't really matter what time of the day you get it done. Like you say, as long as it's to the highest standard possible, the client's happy and it gets done on time, then really it makes no difference. So James is a keen golfer, and we mentioned this in our meeting before, James. If James wants to go and play golf on a Wednesday afternoon and it's not going to affect his deadlines, then why can't he go and do that? You know, if that's what he wants to do, he's getting his work done around it. That's the main thing. And I think the firms are definitely waking up to that, and it definitely seems like Burness Paull are kind of implementing that sort of strategy for their employees. And I think that's definitely something which helps them stand planned out for future trainees who'll be going on to kind of apply for these traineeships over the next couple of years. So I could honestly sit here and ask you loads of different questions, James, but I need to actually start rattling through these questions that I've got listed here. All these questions just keep coming to my mind very organically, which is obviously makes for a good podcast. So you said that your last seat was in the Contentious IP and Tech team at Burness Paull, and that's ultimately where you went on to get your NQ job. So what was the application process like for you to get that NQ job in that department?
Yeah, so that was a wee bit different from the trainee application process. So essentially, what usually happens, my application was a wee bit different, but what usually happens is when the NQ jobs become available, then you would obviously get in contact with the partner in that team, and you would send HR a CV and a covering letter, and following that you would get an interview for the role, and then obviously if you're successful then you got the role. The job that I ended up in came up a wee bit earlier, so it was one of the ones that when I saw it I thought it looked absolutely like a brilliant opportunity, and so I just applied for it, just hoping for the best. And what I done was I spoke to a few people in the team, and I also spoke to the partner who leads the team, Colin, and just asked him about the work and what would be expected from me, and if I could do anything within the next period of time in my traineeship that would help me get that post. And they were all very helpful and very supportive. So yeah, so that was the process basically. And then the interview, I think it lasted around half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and that was it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good that your partner was helpful. You were managing to ask questions of a team there, and I suppose having them work with you for 6 months prior to applying for that position, it probably definitely helped you stand in a good position for when you actually ultimately went to the interview. So in terms of working in that department, I feel like, Contentious IP and Tech, for a lot of law students, that probably seems completely foreign and something that they've not really heard of before, or when they hear of technology they think no thank you, not for me. So what kind of work do you do on a day-to-day basis? And I've said to you before, I don't like asking this question because for a solicitor these days, your days are never the same. You don't get 2 days the same. You're doing a wide variety of different tasks. But the way I like to frame it is, if you're sitting, say you're at a Christmas dinner with a distant relative, how would you sum up your current role to them?
Yeah, so as you say, it is quite difficult to sum up in terms of just speaking about a day-to-day basis. But basically, I work obviously within that team on a wide range of different IP disputes. A lot of the work that I've done up to this date has been to do with copyright enforcement, which is just obviously basically to do with people using other people's intellectual property without authorization to do so. And so that's been copyright has been what I've worked on the most, I would say, up to this point. Do a wee bit of trademark work as well. It is a difficult one to explain to people sitting round the table, explain it to my family and things like that. But yeah, so essentially I work on disputes to do with all different types of intellectual property, which is very, very interesting. And no day is the same, I must say.
Yeah, I suppose no two cases will be the same either when it comes to IP, because the infringement and stuff can take a wide variety of different forms, can't it?
Yeah, of course. And what I've really enjoyed is writing blogs within when I've joined this team, because it really forces me to learn and just expand my knowledge in things, so that in future I can speak to it confidently. So that's been a massive part of the process for me, and I would say as a trainee, having that open mind throughout the process of just constantly trying to learn, because even as a qualified lawyer, and I'm sure everybody would agree, it's a constant learning process. There are some things that you maybe aren't as sure of as you are other things, and it's just a case of continually learning, continually growing.
Yeah. Definitely, when it comes to working in like IP and the digital world generally, the world is still trying to find a way to regulate all that properly, and there's new things coming out all the time. So I think for a position like that in the digital world, it's going to be tough to be an expert and then not have to expand your knowledge for a further 5 years, whatever it is. I think it's definitely a kind of continual learning process. And I know you said, James, when we spoke before, that you didn't take the intellectual property module on your undergraduate LLB, and I'm doing that at Stirling just now in my semester in my third year, so I can kind of relate to what you're saying about copyright and trademarks and things like that. So the fact you didn't take that module and now you work in that area, do you think that hindered you massively, or have you actually managed to find it okay?
No, it didn't really hinder me at all because I was always interested in it, to be honest, through my music and things like that, obviously copyright specifically. So it was always something that I had in the back of my mind and kept up to date with, obviously through just staying up to date with IP blogs and the like. So I did know quite a bit about it before I came into this seat, to be honest with you. It's just that at uni at the time, I can't remember why I didn't pick it, to be honest. It may have clashed with another class that I wanted to pick. And obviously all the way through uni, I was trying to keep as much of an open mind as possible and trying to pick subjects which would give me the most kind of options, I suppose, going forward. And at that point, I wasn't really too sure what I wanted to go into. So as I say, I've always kept up to date with IP, and obviously now that I'm in the job, I absolutely love it. I must say.
Yeah, it's good to hear that, if you don't take a module at university on your LLB, it doesn't mean you won't find yourself end up working in that area down the line. I think that's definitely a kind of important point for people to learn, because there's certain modules I know that I'm not going to take, but who knows, I might end up working in those fields. You never know. I think it's always good to kind of keep your options open in that regard. So obviously it's still very early days for you in your career, and you're obviously in that department just now. Is that something you can see yourself working in for the foreseeable future?
Oh, absolutely. I think like the work is great. I'm so interested in it, and I'm not just saying that. I genuinely am so interested in it. And the team that I work within, everybody in that team is absolutely fantastic. I really feel that they are but number one, amazing at their job, but also really, really nice people. And obviously, if I've ever got questions to ask or need any help, they're always there to support us. It's a real team effort, and that's something that was so important to me, as I've said, but it was so important to me in applying for an NQ position. So yeah, I definitely do see myself working in this area for the foreseeable future, for sure.
Yeah, it's really good to hear, and it kind of put a lot of my worries to bed as well when it comes to finding the job that you're passionate about, finding your way into a team where you feel part of the culture, you feel valued, things like that. I definitely think it's good to portray success stories like yourself, James, to the people listening, so they can kind of calm their own fears and their own worries and think, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do just now, but in the end, I'm sure it's going to be okay. So I suppose we've probably spoken enough about your role as a solicitor, James, and a big reason why I wanted you to come on the show was your passions away from the legal profession. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your passion for music and how important that is for you to ensure you've got a healthy work-life balance going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Music has been something that has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. There's never been a point in my life that I can remember where I can't remember being able to play the guitar. That's something that I've done since a very, very young age. My dad's quite musical. In fact, my family is quite musical. So, yeah, it's always been a massive, massive part of my life. And obviously, growing up, I've continued to play music, get better and better. And I played in a band when I was at school. And now, me and my cousin, we play music together and sing and write our own music, which has been a massive part of my life. And so, obviously, we've played a lot of live performances, saying that not in the last wee while. But we have been doing that and have managed to release music in Spotify and Apple Music, etc. So that's always been a massive part of my life and is so important for me because I feel like when I play music, I'm really happy. It makes you just go into your own wee world. So it's been massively important for me to continue doing that even while I've been working, and I've been able to do it. I mean, you'll see if I mean a wee plug, but you'll see if you go into my Spotify that all of the music that I've released recently anyway has been throughout my traineeship, and we're going to be releasing some new music probably at the end of this month or the start of next month. So it's really exciting, and again, the firm and the people that I've been working with have been very supportive of that, which is obviously massively appreciated by me.
And don't worry, James, I'll make sure I put all the links in the description of this podcast. Anyone wants to check out James's music, make sure you go down to the description, click those links, give him a follow, all that good stuff. So, well, in terms of like COVID and, you know, gigs have been shut down for a long time, and we're kind of seeing them crop up now. So, have you got any live performances coming up? Could the SULS committee come and see you anytime soon?
Well, we've not actually got anything planned yet, but of course, when that is planned, I'll get in touch with you, and anybody that wants to come down can come down and see us. And obviously we're really excited about getting back playing live, but we've been recording throughout and trying to release music while we've not been able to play live, so that has been a good substitute, but nothing to beat the real thing of playing live to people. Yeah,
definitely keep us up to date with that, James, because I'd definitely love to come and see you play. I think it'll be, you know, it's not something we've done yet on the committee. You know, we've went out for like drinks and stuff, you know, traditional student stuff, as I'm sure you'd imagine, but never went to like a gig together. So why not go and see, you know, a good friend of the committee, James, play some music? I think that would be really interesting. So definitely keep us up to date with that.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. So I think to wrap us up, James, we've been going for kind of like half an hour now, so I don't want to keep you too long. I think the best way, for me anyway, to wrap up this show with yourself would be to get you to give one piece of advice to our listeners who are looking to embark on a similar journey into the profession that you took.
Well, I would say one piece of advice that I would give to everybody going through uni actually is just always believe in yourself and never ever think that you're not good enough or that you're not able to reach the goals that you've set for yourself. I think everybody has to remember that you always have something to offer, and there's always something that you know that other people don't. So don't always assume that everybody else knows more than you, because that is something that I done at uni, and obviously I had quite a bit of like self-doubt in that respect throughout my time at uni, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. So I would say to everybody that's going through this same process is you can do whatever you want to do, and just believe that you'll get to the goal that you set for yourself.
Absolutely, definitely words to live by. Some very inspirational words there, James. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I think from a personal point of view, there's not many episodes that I've recorded where I've actually had this many questions, like just from myself. I think, you know, we could definitely go on for hours and hours on end. I'd love to pick your brains about other topics as well, but unfortunately we only have, you know, a set amount of time here on the show. So I just want to thank you again for coming on. It's been absolutely amazing to chat to you. You're an absolute hero, and like I mentioned before, the SULS are trying to, you know, establish some sort of relationship with Burness Paull, and we've got, you know, an event coming up next month, so I really do hope that we'll get to see you at some future collaborative events that we put on with the firm, and who knows, hopefully see you at a gig soon.
Thank you very much for having me on. It has been great to speak with you, and obviously if you need me for anything in the future, you know where I am, so give me a shout.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Stirling University Law Society podcast. Be sure to check out our website and social media pages through the links below.